All right, let's jump right in. If you work in or manage a security operations center, you already know the daily grind. But today, we're going to change that. We're looking at Strategy 6 from our playbook on building a world-class SOC, illuminate adversaries with cyber threat intelligence. We're taking your operation from a state of constant, exhausting reactivity and turning it into a proactive, adversary-focused powerhouse. So let's get into it.
Here's the roadmap for today. We'll cover the power of CTI, how to operationalize it, what it looks like in modern environments, avoiding those common pitfalls, building elite SOC capabilities, and finally, your takeaways and next steps.
Starting with Section 1, the power of CTI. Let's face it, modern SOC analysts are dealing with serious exhaustion and alert fatigue on a daily basis.
Listen, I've got a question for you. Are you actually hunting adversaries, or are you just chasing alerts? Because without the right context, defending your network is basically just an endless, exhausting game of whack-a-mole. You know the drill. See an alert, close an alert. But you never actually find out who's on the other side of that keyboard, what they're after, or crucially, what they're going to do next. So we need to get on the same page about what cyber threat intelligence, or CTI, actually is. Our source defines it as the collection, processing, organizing, and interpreting of data into actionable information relating to the capabilities, opportunities, actions, and intent of adversaries. Okay, that's a mouthful, but look at the keywords there: actionable, intent, and adversaries. CTI is a highly tailored, actionable context engine. It is absolutely not just some raw data feed of IP addresses that you blindly plug into a firewall and hope for the best. Think of CTI like a high-powered flashlight in a pitch-black room. The strategic benefits are just massive. It shifts your entire SOC from this reactive per-incident mindset to an adversary-focused paradigm. It actually helps you spot those unwanted actors lurking in complex networks. It lets you fine-tune your sensors, and this is the best part, anticipate and stop imminent attacks before the damage is done. And for the leaders watching, CTI gives you the exact business context you need to justify those targeted monitoring investments to your executives and CISOs. Okay, moving on to Section 2, operationalizing threat intelligence. It's one thing to talk theory, but how do world-class SOCs actually embed this into their daily workflows? They do it by relying on the classic intelligence cycle. It's a rigorous, repeatable process. You kick things off with planning, figuring out exactly what questions you need answered. Then comes collection of the data, processing it into something you can actually use, and analysis to find the real meaning. Dissemination gets that intel into the hands of decision makers or into your automated tools. And finally, evaluation. This makes sure the intelligence was actually useful, which creates this continuous, high-speed feedback loop. Take a look at this core triad of CTI: context, analysis, and action. This is brilliant. Context is all about reading the adversary's intent and their resources. That's what drives your ability to anticipate. Then analysis takes all that untrusted reporting and finds the trends, the scenarios, the tactics. It answers the question, what is happening right now? And finally, action. This structures the data to feed your incident response and your SIEMs, basically answering, where is this threat and what are we going to do about it? Now, to actually hit that action phase, you need a very specific recipe. Intelligence only becomes truly actionable when three things perfectly intersect. First, external adversary information, stuff like their motives and infrastructure. Second, your internal technical environment, the reality of your digital assets and telemetry. And third, relevancy, your specific business priorities. Think about it. If you know all about an adversary, but they couldn't care less about your business sector, or you don't even have the telemetry to spot them, well, that intelligence isn't actually actionable for you, is it? All right, Section 3, CTI in modern environments. Let's see how these principles apply to the extended, interconnected boundaries of modern IT.
The traditional network perimeter? Yeah, that's completely gone. Today, we're dealing with extended boundaries, cloud environments, massive SaaS platform adoption, entirely remote workforces. This means that relying purely on reactive, perimeter-based alerts is completely obsolete. You literally cannot afford to wait for an attacker to trip a firewall alarm when your most critical data lives out in a decentralized cloud app. You absolutely must have anticipatory defense.
So, how do mature SOCs adapt to this? They fuse their local environment data with external threat intel. They're correlating cloud identity provider telemetry with known adversary tactics. They track those highly sophisticated actors who live off the land. You know, the ones who don't even bother with malware. They just hijack legitimate admin tools already sitting in your cloud. And by leveraging automated APIs, These elite SOCs feed this contextual intelligence straight out to remote endpoints. That way, they maintain parity with the adversary, no matter where the asset actually lives. Which brings us to Section 4, avoiding common CTI pitfalls. There are some massive misconceptions out there that plague organizations trying to adopt CTI, and we need to clear them up. Look at this stark contrast. On the left, we have raw data, lists of malware hashes, IPs, unstructured indicators of compromise. On the right, we have truly actionable CTI, contextualized adversary tactics, understood intent, tailored defensive actions. I can't stress this enough. Buying a raw, uncontextualized feed of IOCs is absolutely not the same thing as having a functional CTI program. When a SOC mistakes raw data for intelligence, you start seeing the classic signs of immaturity. They're drowning in information overload and alert noise. They're ingesting completely irrelevant data. I mean, imagine tracking cybercriminals targeting the housing sector when you're a SOC defending a power grid. It sounds crazy, but that exact absurdity happens every single day. They also fall into the trap of assuming that just because a commercial feed is expensive, it automatically means high quality. And the biggest pitfall? Believing that malware indicators alone give you comprehensive CTI. That completely misses the adversaries who just use legitimate stolen credentials to waltz right into your systems. For CTI to have any real value, it has to answer specific questions for your decision makers. Let's look at Section 5, building elite SOC capabilities. How do we progress from struggling with all that alert noise to actually achieving a world-class operation? Let's trace this maturity journey. A beginner SOC? They're highly reactive, they're managing basic feeds and spreadsheets and just chasing known malware. An intermediate SOC steps it up a bit. They start fusing external data and using basic case management. But an elite SOC? Their entire focus is anticipatory defense. They're using advanced frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK, they leverage dedicated platforms and engage in proactive threat hunting. They're literally stopping the adversary before the payload is ever even deployed. To get to that elite level, mature SOCs lean heavily on threat intelligence platforms, or TIPs. A TIP is essentially the central workflow engine for an advanced CTI analyst. It ingests and organizes just massive volumes of adversary data at lightning speed. It manages threat knowledge seamlessly across entire campaigns, instead of treating every single incident like some isolated event. Plus, it integrates directly with SIEMs to completely automate the enrichment of incoming alerts. It's a total game changer. And finally, Section 6, takeaways and next steps. Let's synthesize everything we've talked about into practical, immediate steps you can take today. All right, here is your roadmap. For a quick win, go identify and map your most critical mission assets. You can't apply relevancy if you don't even know what matters most to your business, right? In the medium term, you need to rigorously filter your existing CTI feeds strictly for your sector's relevancy. Cut the noise. Long term, you should plan to integrate a TIP and establish a dedicated threat hunting program. But listen, the golden rule here is vital. You have to invest in experienced CTI analysts, not just fancy automated tools. And that brings us to our ultimate payoff statement. While technology absolutely allows us to scale our defenses and process data at machine speed, human analytical judgment is the true core of cyber threat intelligence. CTI is a dynamic, active-thinking, people-centric function. It is the skilled analyst armed with the right context who allows you to anticipate the adversary before the attack even happens. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final critical thought. You know the power of CTI now, the intelligence cycle, the absolute necessity of context. But how can you possibly illuminate these sophisticated adversaries if your sensors are blind and you aren't collecting the right data from your environment to begin with? That is a massive dependency, and it's one we absolutely have to solve. Which perfectly sets the stage for our next explainer in this series, Strategy 7, Select and Collect the Right Data. Thanks for joining me today, and keep hunting.